Why
is Dominance
still getting hate?
Dominance is a skill with a decent bit of history, but through all that history, one thing has stayed the same. Quirked up Flak still gets told to kick rocks and die. At least by the wider player base. Most of the more hardcore BL3 players do appreciate Dominance, but I still find that the wider community to this day still thinks that it's not that great, and it still overall ends up as a pretty underrated skill. So first off here, what is Dominance? Dominance is the capstone of Flak's blue tree, which itself is a very popular tree for a lot of different builds, offering both fantastic damage and utility. Dominance allows Flak to, well, dominate an enemy, either through hitting them with a melee attack or ADSing and scoring a critical hit. While dominated, that enemy will turn into an ally for the 12 seconds that it lasts, or 24 seconds on beast enemies. And while it's an ally, it'll draw aggro and lose 2% of its max health per second. When the duration ends or this target dies, they'll release a radiation nova. And Dominance's reputation isn't entirely undeserved. Dominance started out a lot weaker and a lot jankier than it currently is. Originally, it could only be activated through meleeing an enemy, which was very inconvenient for Flak to do most of the time. It was only really useful against other melee enemies that were going to get close to you anyways, but with Flak's low survivability, you kinda didn't want enemies close to you at all. So playing in a range to melee an enemy or letting an enemy melee you really wasn't ideal. Along with that, it could also be a little bit jankier than it can be nowadays, but things had gotten ironed out with time. But the single biggest change that Dominance ever got was that ability to now proc it on ADS. This made it so much more widely applicable, even to more enemy types, as now you could much more easily activate it on flying enemies, all while being significantly easier to fit into Flak's gameplay loops. So now, what are the actual reasons that you, yes you viewer that maybe doesn't use Dominance, should actually be using Dominance? The first and most obvious, of course, is just that it's amazing crowd control. It's incredibly controllable and easy to activate. I mean, you can just right-click at any time to dominate an enemy, and it's pretty much just instant value and aggro relief the second that you dominate an enemy, which is incredibly important for a lot of Flak builds because Flak needs all the survivability that they can get. Flak's a squishy little robot. The less enemies targeting them means that Flak gets to survive for even longer. But it's not just Flak, because that can also drop aggro off of your pet, being incredibly useful if you're running a build that maybe doesn't have that much into pet survivability. Along with that, it can help draw melee enemies towards a certain area, grouping them up for a big old grenade throw or radiation chain, or just mowing them all down with the Monarch. This aggro relief given by Dominance is also one of the ways that Flak can actually drop aggro for activating Hidden Machine. For those that might be unaware, Hidden Machine is bait for a vast majority of builds. Quite literally for any build that doesn't use or can't use the Red Fang, Not My Circus, or a Mesmer. Hidden Machine requires enemies to not be targeting Flak. You might foolishly believe that this happens when you go invisible during fadeaway, but it doesn't. If an enemy was already targeting Flak, they will continue to even during fadeaway most of the time. It's more like they're pretending not to see Flak, but they still do, and therefore no Hidden Machine. Actually drawing aggro to a different target through, again, either Dominance, Red Fang, Not My Circus, or a Mesmer allows you to actually use that skill, which is a pretty nice damage buff. Dominance also allows the biggest threats on the battlefield to become your best allies, and you can do it in an instant with no significant resource loss. Badasses, Anointed, and other beefcakes can tank enemy fire for a long time. War Dogs offer amazing crowd control with their often aggressive positioning and AoE slow through their static field. Flying enemies, especially the Death Spheres, draw aggro over a very large area, and so many more. Understanding target priority is no longer just which enemy you want to kill first. With Dominance, it becomes a game of Pokemon to figure out what enemies you want to use for the situation and how. An often underappreciated part of Dominance as well is the Radiation Nova. This assists in rad chains even if you don't have radiation in your build, helping to clear large groups, which again, Dominance helps to set up for by drawing enemies in. It's like a Left 4 Dead pipe bomb. The best praise that I most often see Dominance get is that it's good but niche. I don't think it is. At least it's not any more niche than the other previously mentioned options. There are tons of reasons you might not be able to or want to slot in a Red Fang, Not My Circus, or a Mesmer. Red Fang or Not My Circus only work with specific skills. Fadeaway for Not My Circus and Gamma Burst for Red Fang. But Red Fang takes up a class mod slot, and while a very good class mod, some builds might prefer something else. For Fadeaway, Not My Circus isn't even really that popular of an option due to Fadeaway having some killer augments like Gorillas in the Mist, Unblinking Eye, and Until You Are Dead. The Mesmer is also a great option for Flak, but again, that takes up a slot that could be used for other very good grenades either for damage or utility, both of which Flak has many good options for. Dominance could allow you to open up that slot to literally any other option for just a single point. Of course, Dominance is a capstone, but Blue Tree is a very strong tree and one that a lot of Flak builds do go very deep into anyways. I've seen some builds that spec all the way down to Dominance, but don't pick it up due to thinking that it isn't worth the single point. Of course, I'm not saying every build ever should be running Dominance and that it's the end-all be-all. Some builds can't afford the points to get it. Some builds would rather actually fall back to one of those different options. But the point here is to say that it shouldn't be completely disregarded, as I see a lot of people often do with Dominance. This is the beauty of BO3 build crafting. It's decision making and weighing these different trade-offs. Let's say you're building Flak and looking to get some more crowd control in your build. Can I afford to use a Mesmer in place of a Hunter Seeker or Piss? Do I want to give up my class mod slot to Red Fang? Should I pivot to Fade Away? Would not my Circus even be worth taking just to get Hidden Machine active? These are the types of questions you might have to weigh when building for Flak. And sometimes the answer might just be Dominance. Genuinely, I think Dominance might be one of the single best capstones in the entirety of BL3, which is why it's so crazy to see today that people still think that it is a terrible skill. Dominance is so versatile in what it can offer and the problems that it can solve within your build crafting, but it's also versatile even just in moment-to-moment gameplay, offering up so many different opportunities and ways to take on an engagement that you otherwise wouldn't have, and creating an impact on your gameplay that not many other skills or capstones have. I'm of course not saying that this is the strongest capstone, this is no short fuse, but again, just the variety and versatility that Dominance has, the impact that it directly has on your gameplay and what it can allow you to do and get away with, yeah, I think it definitely can be argued that Dominance is up there as one of the best. And at the very least, personally, it's one of my favorites. That's gonna about do it for this one though. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there will be a link to down in the description below. And just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.